Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 42 of the Canberra Football Show. I'm Matt Nicoletti. Today, we are having our NPLW season review. I've got a stack cast here today. Brought everybody on. First, Jérémy, how's it going today, mate? It's been a while.
I know, right? We used to be so close every weekend, every other weekend. Thanks for having me on, Matt. I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm very good, thanks. Just work from home and whatnot. So it is what it is at the moment, isn't it? Matty, happy to have you back on, mate. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks, Matt. Always good to be back on. Look, I'm doing all right, mate. I miss football probably as much as everybody else. I think if the European leagues hadn't kicked off when they did, I'd be going nuts right about now. What I wouldn't give for a cold and rainy day at the top of, Hawker scaffolding just to watch some football. And I never thought I'd say that.
Well, I don't regret, not being at Hawker, but the rest of the grounds, yes, 100%. And we welcome on the show for the first time, Steffen. Steffen, it's a pleasure to have you on. How's it going today?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Matt. Hi, guys. Really, really good to be on the show. Thanks for inviting me on. Really enjoyed your commentary and your writing and your podcast, of course, the last couple of years. So, really looking forward to this.
Yeah, and like I said, it's glad to have you on. We were planning on having you on as a lead up for the finals, weren't we? But the season has been what it is, so glad to have you on for the season review. So like everyone knows, when you saw in the NPL1 review, the season was ended after a month's worth of lockdown, and the season wasn't null and void. It was all the teams were given the titles that were at the top. So wherever it stood by the last game that was played, that's what it was. So in this instance, Canberra, Croatia were crowned NPLW champions. Tigers were crowned NPL1 champions. O'Connor Knights were crowned NPL2 champions and were promoted. And Tuggeranong were relegated from NPL1. So that's all as it stands. Does anyone have any thoughts on that sort of decision by Capital Football? I mean, granted, not everyone's gonna be happy regardless, but does anyone want to chime in?
It's a good call, I think. I think it's unless we were able to reopen everything in Canberra 100%, then it was pointless to try and do a half-ass end of season like in November or something like that. So, at the end of the day, if the lockdown is just going to last in Canberra, you might as well just call it where it is. It's been, maybe the NPLW was where it was the tightest, but at least there's no promotion relegation involved. But yeah, I think it's, except for the NPL2 where there was probably a chance for the teams to be promoted. I think maybe the results were sort of where they would have been. It's a shame, of course, that we miss out on football. It's a shame, of course, that the teams and the players and the staff miss out on a bit more of what everyone loves to do. But safety first, health first, and all that.
I'd echo Jérémy's comments, and the fact that they didn't null and void the season, I think, was a really great suggestion. There would have been a bit of consideration given to that and a bit of pressure, but the fact that they've, we got through roughly about 80% of our matches, and the fact that was rewarded, I think, was really good. And you only have to cast your mind back probably 12 months ago when they went through the finals process in a COVID period and restricted access to grounds and things like that. And anybody who was at those grounds or involved in those games, it didn't have that finals feel about it. It kind of felt like people were just doing it because we felt like we had to. So, I give credit to Capital Football for keeping everybody safe. And, congratulations to everybody on the season.
Any thoughts, Steffen, on the decision?
Well, look, we were so fortunate. In Beyond 90, we've got correspondents in all our states, and pretty much at the end, I was the only one talking about our state football. I think South Australia was the other one that had football going on. So I think we're very lucky we got as much as we did. I don't think there was probably any other decision that could have been made. Yeah. I should mention, sorry. Can I just give Beyond 90 a little plug?
Of course.
Yeah, so I'm like the Canberra, or one of the Canberra people for Beyond 90, and we're an online digital platform that promotes and tries to uplift women's football. We're women's football specific. We've got reps in all states pretty much, and a correspondent in the UK and in the US. So we also do a podcast on Monday nights. So it'll be really good if people want to have a read or have a listen. It'll be worth your while, I think. Thanks, Matt.
No, 100%. Definitely go check their stuff out. I've definitely used a lot of Steffen's information over the last year or two, as we all have, colluded with each other in that regard. We've got two little things on team of the season. First, Jérémy's just going to explain a little bit about Russ's process and how the voting is going to work for the NPLW team of the season. Pretty similar to the NPL 1-1, wasn't it, Jérémy?
Yeah, probably the exact same process actually. Russ got his old updated stat sheet out and looked at every single teams and basically picked every player who would have started at least 9 games and just pulled them up for every single team. It usually turns out to be about 11, 12, 13 players maximum, and there's a rough 4-4-3-3 or 4-4-2 coming out of that, and then he sent that list to every single coach in NPLW and asked them to vote for basically their favorite player, asking for each coach to vote for 1 goalkeeper, 4 defenders, 3 midfielders and 3 forwards. Russ will do the hard work and tally it up at the end, and then we'll announce what the team of the season is, which I think it's a great idea to do it that way. We're not the Ballon d'Or yet, so we can't go and ask for every coach, every captain, every journalist. But it's next year. Next year we do that. No, it's great initiative from Russ, definitely.
100%. And I think one thing you forgot to mention there is that the coaches are not allowed to vote for their own players.
Yeah, true.
So yeah, no one think like that, please. That's not how that's how it's happening. And we are delighted, though, to have Steffen's team of the season that he will have on his article for sure. He's going to give us a sneak preview of it. So, Steffen, take it away.
Yeah, I had the same rules as far as minimum 9 games. So that counted players out like Michelle Heyman, for example. But yeah, I'll run through it quickly. Last year's team of the season was a bit heavy on Canberra, Croatia. So I've gone a little bit different this year, and I've got lots of Belconnen Blue Devils players in there. So I was pretty impressed with their fitness and speed this year, and I thought they were sort of ramping up towards a finals challenge that would have been interesting to see if we'd got there. But I'll just run through the team quickly, if you like, guys. Same sort of thing, 3-4-3 type formation. My keeper of the year, and weren't the keepers good this year, guys? It's there was so many great keepers out there, and it was really hard to pick one. I struggled to pick one amongst the top 3, but my keeper of the year is Janet King from West Canberra. So she was incredible. I thought her reflex saves were great. She's fairly new to the top grade, I think. And had a wow of a year. Her ability to do the long bombs out of her hands for those on synthetic pitches out at Woden. Quite a few goals scored because route 1 long bomb, forwards running onto it, scoring. So she's my keeper of the year. In the defence, I've got Vanessa Ryan, Sarah Johnston, both from Belconnen. Sarah's a bit of a cheat because she played about half the season in defence after a couple of injuries there to Karen Clark and Jazz Zabel. But that's how I got her into the team. I couldn't leave her out. So Sarah's in there at centre back. And a little bit surprised, but I reckon it's worthy. I've got Zoe Terry as my right back. To me, Zoe was, in the team that finished bottom, but she was so damaging with her runs. She could run through teams right from her own box to the other box and create, goal scoring chances. So I really wanted to put her in there because I couldn't think of a more damaging right back, to be honest, in the competition this year. So Zoe's my bolter. So good on you, Zoe. My midfielder is, and Vanessa Ryan, she was there last year as well. So really hard to go past her at, in a wide back position. She can play either side, but does the up and back thing so well, very, very fit, knows a defensive role, does the overlapping. So she's brilliant. And Sarah Johnson, when she's in the middle with Michaela Thornton, those two are dynamite going forward, and just held the fort really well. Quality player from the New South Wales NPL coming into the competition this year. So midfield quickly: Talia Backhouse from Belconnen, Michaela Thornton, Krista Hagen from Canberra, Croatia, and Sasha Grove. So what a dynamic midfield that is, guys. Talia scored, I think, 17 goals this year, so it was a real standout coming back to the league. Michaela and Krista and Sasha were there last year as well for me, so I'm pretty happy with that midfield lineup. I'll get your thoughts in a sec. And up front, it's hard to go past Brittany Palombi, Grace Gill, and Ashley Sykes for me. It's probably not too many other options you could really look at there, I think. Shall I go through my bench players and my coach? Is that all right?
Of course.
Okay, I thought coach was coach of the year was last year it was Nick Brozenic from Canberra, Croatia, for what he did. But this year I've given it to Michael Zukowski. First year coaching, got the team super fit, super fast early in the season. You could see that with the Charity Shield win, how they started the season, on a red hot form already at that stage. And Canberra, Croatia tend to grow into the season, and I think they were fitter and faster to start with, and maintain those levels all year. So I was so surprised at I covered the round 17 game, Belconnen versus Olympic, and it was an eye opener about how fit and fast they were. I count 7 players in there in the team that would easily be able to take on anyone in the league as far as speed. So kudos to him for getting his team transformed in that way into playing under a formation, a system that suited his style and rejuvenated them a bit. So here's my coach of the year. My subs: Samantha Ems, Walker City, is my sub goalkeeper. She was brilliant, another brilliant goalkeeper. So she's got called up for Young Matilda's trials and the camp up in Sydney. So had a really solid year. No fear at all in her for a 16-year-old. So really impressed with her. But Chloe Lincoln just misses out too. That game she had against Canberra, Croatia, unbelievable. That was the best goalkeeping performance of the year. But I just thought on balance, what I saw as far as consistency, Samantha's got it. And my other subs are Tiana Jaber, switched between clubs mid-year, but very athletic, good defender back there. You couldn't ask for anyone better in your back line as well. Ali Cook from Canberra Olympic. She had a year in which she changed from a defensive role, and when Ella Hemmings and Brittany Furey's came into the team, she's able to come forward a bit, and that helped the team, I think. And she was fantastic, quite a number of goals too. Alex McKenzie from West Canberra is another sub. I think she's got a big future. She's had a really impressive couple of years, played in the men's comp in the boys as well, and wouldn't be surprised to see her move into a central midfield role at some point, because the way she controls the game, is able to control the game. Really determined, really focused, loves that control in the game. So well done, Alex, for making the team. And Olivia Bomford is my forward substitution. She came from Tassie. My two Beyond 90 Tassie colleagues talked her up before the season, and she didn't disappoint. Fantastic technique, really good vision, and a great shot on her too. So there you go, guys. I've laid it out. I'm curious to see how close it ends up with what the coaches thought. So yeah,
certainly. Do you mind if we give our thoughts on that?
Of course, go for it.
Yeah, what we'll do is if you have a couple of thoughts, just spray it out. I know who Jérémy's going to say from midfield, so I'll probably just say who I would have put in defense. Hello. Yeah, I'd probably have Renee Junior and Tiana Jaber as my fullbacks, but in saying that though, Vanessa Ryan and Zoe Terry, very good choice as well. It just proves, the sort of the depth of choices we have here, doesn't it, Steffen? But for me, those two were the best fullbacks in my opinion. Renee Junior, a bit of a revelation, like we'll mention in the Canberra Croatia one at fullback, sort of converting in there, and she seemed absolutely seamless. Jérémy and I were singing her praises all year. Every time we went on commentary, barely let anything past her. And of course, Tiana Jaber, W League quality player. She brought a different standard to the league, I thought, and congrats to her as well on getting re-signed by Newcastle Jets. In saying that, though, very good team, Steffen.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it, is it's all so subjective, and there's so many good players out there. You really struggle to do this every year, and it's I'll take that on board. Jérémy, what did you think?
Well, I think like you both are saying, we are lucky that I think the level of the competition was pretty high this season. We can find players even in the bottom two teams that deserved the nod. I don't disagree with anything that you put in the team, really. I'd definitely give a nod to player like Ashley Leah Condon. I thought defensively she was spectacular. With Tuggeranong, even against the big teams, she was really steering that ship. The very first game that we saw her playing against Canberra, Croatia, she impressed me, and then she impressed me for the rest of the season. I think Jenny Bissett was also a bit of a game changer for Canberra, Croatia. She, in my opinion, she basically allowed Grace Gill to take a bit of a rest, because she brought that experience a little bit lower down on the pitch. And she sort of pushed Grace to only play number 9 this season, whether last year she was alternating between number 9 and number 10. But basically we have the same sort of mindset. I think we've seen the player that were really good. Erica Pennyfield, I think, probably deserves a shot as well at Gungahlin. I think it's not been a year maybe as good as we expected from the Gunners, but Erica brought all her experience, and she kept playing hard, game in, game out. And I think that her ability to score goals and her ability to basically run everywhere on the field, and to talk to the girls with the experience that she had, probably helped Diego quite a bit. So yeah, but besides that, Sammy Ems, I think I agree with you. She's such a great goalkeeper. Janet King was amazing this season, coming off a season where she played half goalkeeper, half on the field at Monaro. And everybody else that you mentioned, I can only agree. Yeah,
your Gungahlin point is a good one. I had 3 Gungahlin players in last year, and I had 4 of them just on the edge. So Erica Pennyfield was definitely one of them, but I think Maddie Percival also had a really good year. And Ella Rose Brown, when she was switched around a bit, and she played fullback really well on some of the quicker wingers she was up against, and then went back to her attacking role and was great there as well. So I think as on a whole though, and we'll talk about that when we get to the team, but they probably didn't quite get where they wanted to get to this year. Yeah.
Matty?
Yeah, look, I think it's a great team. Steffen, there's not too many holes in there. I think one of the young guns for me, Hunt, probably might be the switch for Bomford. For me, I know she went through that patch where she didn't score, but her defensive pressure and her ability to create space for others was super impressive from the youngster this year. Kudos on his Zoe Terry call. I think that's bang on. She had a cracker of a season, and Tuggeranong should be doing everything they can to hold on to her going into next year. And Maddie Percival certainly started to grow into the season and started to become the player that we thought she knew. That midfield though that you've got set up in there, with Thornton and Grove and Backhouse, those sorts of players. I mean, that's a scary midfield. There's goals and there's box to box players everywhere, which makes me glad I'm not coaching against that team. So
yeah, awesome. So thank you once again, Steffen, for your team there, and I look forward to reading the whole thing in your article. Let's get straight into the teams, shall we? So yeah, we've got a few of us on, so I won't go to all views for every team, so don't feel offended if I don't come to you. But if you really want to say something after we've moved on, just chime in, interrupt me. I'm happy to oblige. All right, let's start with Canberra, Croatia, shall we? They finishing in first place. They won the league, of course, by finishing in first place. They won the Fed Cup as well, defeating West Canberra in the final. They were runners-up in the Charity Shield, and they also had the league top scorer in Brittany Palombi. Overall, another strong season for the reigning champions that only saw them lose and draw one match of each in the regular season. Plenty of players stood out here. I'll let you guys discuss all the players, and it was just such a consistent season throughout for Canberra, Croatia. But I feel like they were really coming into their own around the time that lockdown ended, especially Grace Gill. She really, like, over the last few games before lockdown, she really started to pick up her goal tally, and she was really starting to be deadly. Plenty of players there, and Olivia Fogarty as well, I thought was really, really good. If it wasn't for her and her running off the ball, work off the ball, half the time you wouldn't be able to do half that half of the game plan there. And she did a fantastic job there. And of course, like I mentioned, Renee Junior as well, absolute revelation, probably fullback of the year for me, and probably one of the players of the season for me as well. I was very, very impressed by her this season. I'll let you guys discuss the rest though. Let's start with Jérémy. Biggest fan of Canberra, Croatia.
I like a team who wins. What can I say? Look, I think it was fantastic. The call where I guess I'll gently disagree with Steffen is to put Michael as coach of the year. I'll put 100% Nick as coach of the year. Just because it's one thing to finally win as Canberra, Croatia, when Belconnen have been winning for 10 years. It's another thing to come back the year after with a target on your back, with the very first game of the season, pre-season, you would say, lost the Charity Shield, and then get back on your horse and basically win every single game again. The game that they lose, it's that fantastic game from Chloe Lincoln that we discussed, but they just looked untouchable. And if they look untouchable, it's because the work is done, before the season starts to make sure that there's no champions hangover. We see it in every competition at every level. When you win the competition, maybe you think that you made it. Maybe you think that you don't need to listen to your coach anymore. Maybe you think that you don't need to work as hard anymore because anyway you've just won. So why would you? So to see them starting back the way they start back and coming back into their own and their ability to sort of level up when it matters. I mean, that second game against Belconnen, Belconnen being probably the best team of the season up until that point. And when Canberra, Croatia plays against them and just destroy them. And we didn't see Belconnen for almost 60 minutes that day. So I think Canberra, Croatia has been excellent in the sense that they lost Grace Field. They replaced her kind of by Jenny Bissett, which was a great addition. They've added Olivia Fogarty, like you said, Matt. Lots of great run of the ball, lots of great effort on the ball, some great goals and some great goal opportunity created as well for everybody else. Brittany Palombi as lethal as ever. I really think that it's harder to win the second year than the first year. So in that sense, I feel like the effort that this team has put through was fantastic, and I'm happy that they won. I wish we would have seen them in the grand final against Belconnen that added just maybe the one piece of the puzzle that was making them even better, being Tiana Jaber. But look, it's still a great achievement for Nick Brozinich and his team, and yeah, I really think that they would have been hardly beatable even until the end.
Anything to add on the big red machine, as you call him, Matty?
Big red machine.
I see you're wearing red today.
Yeah, pure coincidence.
Not hiding his support.
I'm not. Yeah. So there's no bias statements about to come out. 100% agree with Jérémy on Nick being coach of the year, because it would have been really easy for that bubble to have burst, the pressure be released from finally being champions, and then it all just fall over. But what they actively did in the off season, okay, so they lost Grace Field, but I actually don't think that mattered. Like, they got better. Jenny Bissett made them better. Olivia Fogarty made them better. Renee Junior made them far more stable at the back. And I go back to the round one game where they had to draw. And Jérémy and I, we were really worried about that right back spot because Renee Jr. she came off the bench that day, and we sort of said that's going to be the weak point. If you're watching this, if you're a Belconnen or a Gungahlin, that's where you're going to go. And then 1 week later, there's Renee Jr. And the door's closed. She was an absolutely brilliant addition. So not only to continue, to get results, but to actually play better football and be that much more commanding is a huge credit to Nick and a huge credit to the culture that he and those senior players have built. You've got Churchill, I think it was 200 games or something this year, which is, all at Canberra, Croatia. Like, it's a massive credit to her, that the culture that, Churchill and Gill instilled, that they're starting to pass on, and the demands for excellence. If Palombi only gets 2 goals a game, that's disappointing for her because they demand more. Krista Hagen is the unsung hero, and I know you had her in your team, Steffen. But we all talk about Bissett, Gill, but she makes that team tick as much as anybody else. And then Fenson at the back there just gives that rock, that spine through the middle is absolutely phenomenal. And bar, to be brutally honest, bar turning up on grand final day and it pouring down with rain and making the contest a 50-50 event like we saw when they played Gungahlin at Gungahlin, where it was really tight. I couldn't see anyone getting close. Nobody just seemed to have the answers. And Jérémy's right. You go back to that game against Belconnen, and we sat there at half time, and Belconnen probably touched the ball 5 times, and they were supposed to be the guys who were going to knock them off. So absolutely brilliant year. I actually think it's better than their year last year because they've sustained it for a long period. People could have argued that last year, given it was a bit of a sprint, it was a bit of a fluke, right? But Nick and that group have proven beyond a doubt that if they stay together, they're the next dynasty, really.
Let's move on to Belconnen United. Second place, they finished. They won the Charity Shield, and their coach, Michael Zukowski, and they finished second on the ladder, of course. The coach, Michael Zukowski, will be leaving the club now, or not leaving the club, but he will be leaving the women's program. He will become the head coach of the NPL1 at Belconnen United, replacing Fab Michelli, who moved on to the Western Sydney Wanderers under 16s. Congratulations to Michael and congratulations to Fab as well in that regard. Best luck to Michael in this new role. Like Steffen mentioned, he brought a lot to the team. They only suffered 2 losses, I believe, in the league, if I'm not mistaken, and they were both to Canberra, Croatia. But that would be the one thing that they would have been disappointed in, because like Jérémy mentioned, there was large portions of those games where they just weren't able to handle what Canberra, Croatia were bringing in those instances. It's safe to say he also brought a big emphasis on youth and bringing through the youth. Like Riley Ewan, for example, she shined throughout the season. Steffen mentioned Talia Backhouse and Olivia Bomford as well. I thought they were crucial. And let's not forget Michaela Thornton. It's safe to say she had more of a free role, sort of a more free roaming role this season. And I think that sort of showed in how many goals she scored and the quality of those goals that she scored. There was that one game, I think it was at Gungahlin, against the Gungahlin United, that Matty and I called it the AIS, where she scored that screamer from well outside the box. So she had a fantastic season also as well. I mean, I guess you wouldn't expect anything less from Michaela Thornton. Let's start with you, Steffen. You put a lot of Blue Devils in your team of the year. Do you want to expand a little bit upon what you thought of Belconnen United this season?
Yeah, sure. I'll just add a couple of things. I mean, to me, like I said, the speed and the fitness was the thing that struck me. So if I run through those 7 names: Backhouse, Bobbin, Ryan, Johnson, Jaber, Thornton, Ewan, I would not like to be in a race against any of them. So that's, and that's 7 out of the 11, and and the others aren't far behind. So that's, I think that's how they got their teams. Remember last season, they were defeated by Canberra United Academy at one point, and they were nowhere near them this year. And you couldn't see that happening because the academy team are another team that rely on their mobility and their speed, and they just didn't get a look in against Belconnen this year. I just wanted to give a couple of shout outs though. One is to Bella Tamaro. So she came into the central defence and had by far her best season that I've seen her play. Didn't do a thing wrong all season when Karen Clark and Jazz Sables set out for a while. So well done to her. And I want to also mention Leah Carnegie's corner kicks. So dangerous. 3 really brilliant corner takers in the league. Krista Hagen, I think, is probably the best example, but Leah's not far behind. Really knows how to drop them on that 6-yard box. And Erica Pennyfield's also very good in that space. So they're the only other things I wanted to say. Christina Esposito, you don't perhaps talk about the goalkeepers in the teams that do really well as much, but she had another really strong year, backing up from her great year last year with West Canberra. So yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned Leah Carnegie there as well, because she's definitely a player that really solidified herself as a starter under Michael Zukowski. And yeah, I echo your thoughts on Esposito as well. Great. I think we said at the start of the year that was a great addition to sort of solidify themselves in goals. Belconnen United, we'll go with Jérémy to finish this one off. What else did you think about Belconnen United this season?
I think Michael deserves commendation because I think he brought a lot of change to that team. He brought Bomford, Backhouse, Kira Bobin was back from a year where she didn't play much last season, and you sort of made those girls play more. So at the end of the day, he changed probably a little bit more than what Ahmed Ugul had to change because he lost some players last season, and he made those girls gel, and I think he made them play well. When you play against Canberra, Croatia, it's just another story because like Matty was saying, it's probably a dynasty now. It's just a good word to use. But I really think that, yeah, Michael did a good job. I think, one girl maybe that also needs a shout is the second goalkeeper of Belconnen United, Karen Clark. How good was she when she found herself in between the sticks? She had two really good goals. But yeah, I think Belconnen had a very good year. We've seen here and there what could be the issues when they play against the Canberra Croatia, and I would put that down simply to the fact that those girls were playing together for the first year, and that there's some automatism that you just can't find when you don't play against a team as good as Canberra Croatia every single weekend. So you do what you need to do to win, and then you don't realize that you need to do 3 times as that when you play against Deakin. But yeah, Michaela Thornton was impressive last year. I thought she was great. This season, I think she was twice the player she was last season. She was everywhere. She did less of those, and hope she forgives me, useless runs that she might have done last season, where you would find her down as a left back and then as a right winger, and then in a minute. So she focused more on what her position is, which is probably because there was some good players around her to help her doing that. But what she did fantastically, and her run through other teams, breaking 2 lines in 10 seconds, were brutal for every other team.
Hey Matt, can I just ask the guys a question?
Of course. Because
it's one that I've been racking in my brain about Belconnen, which is, how far did you guys have them going? Because as I watched the team progress throughout the year and I watched them go, and I take Steffen's point on fitness and their speed, and they were very much a run and gun team. And that's where they ran into problem with Canberra, Croatia, because they couldn't run and gun through those compact lines. And I go back to that AIS game that we did, Matt, and they had real problems breaking down Gungahlin, my favourites, who looked like they were starting on the up curve. And I just wonder if we all think that they were going to make it to that grand final with that same style, or whether they were starting to get found out and get stuck, because I'm not convinced they would have got there.
I don't know which team would have been good enough to find them out and beat them at their game besides Canberra, Croatia. Because I reckon Gungahlin was coming into their own, obviously with the addition of Michelle. But I think every other team was missing what was necessary to beat Belconnen, which was a very, very good central midfield. Because if you had a dense central midfield, I think Belconnen couldn't beat you, because for how good as Mickey and Olivia Bonford and Talia Backhouse are, Michaela can do that, but they were missing that defensive midfielder who can really hold everything and make sure that everyone comes back in defense, and make sure that not everyone just runs away and use their speed and their power to try and get to the goals. I don't think any other team though had that either. I think Gungahlin was crucially missing that as well. Canberra Olympic, if you had everyone playing and ready, maybe. I agree with you that maybe they would have been found that. I still think that maybe the firepower was too much. But yeah, beside Canberra, Croatia, I don't think on a good day, I don't think anyone else could beat them. And like I said, the addition of Tiana Jaber, if anything, probably added that little thing where she would probably had be the one coming out of her defensive line and stepping up into the midfield to be able to stop the other player. That would have been my idea, to tell her to stay in defense, and as soon as she sees a Grace Gill dropping, you just follow Grace. You just make sure that girl doesn't get the ball, and then maybe that's your way to beat Canberra, Croatia. So maybe that would have been a way to do it. But I agree with you. I still don't think any other team besides Canberra, Croatia had the weapons to get through them.
Sounds like Jérémy's the next Belconnen coach.
I have my diploma.
I guess I saw things a little differently. Sorry, I guess for me, the getting Sarah Johnson back into the midfield was a big thing for Belconnen. When she came back to the back line, they lost something, and when she came back into the midfield towards the back end of the season, they changed her and were dangerous. So that was part of my thinking as far as believing that they were going to perhaps put in a challenge for that title at the end. She transformed the team that much. When you see both Thornton and Johnson playing the similar sort of style, and you got two threats, the same sort of threats coming at you, that's a lot to deal with. And the addition of Jaber, as you said, so to me they were building. They lost that game in round 11 or 12 against Canberra FC, Canberra, Croatia. But after that, I thought they were building towards something. So that's how I saw it anyway.
All right, let's move on to third place, Gungahlin United. Their final placing in the ladder is safe to say it's a reflection of their hard work and how they sort of improved in those last 4 rounds or so, because before that, it's safe to say that they weren't the team that we saw last season. They were just trying to find something. And I agree with Jérémy. They were coming into their own near the end. It would have been interesting to see if we had the last 5 rounds, would Gungahlin have kept it up? I believe they probably would have, because it seemed like they were really starting to turn that corner. And to be fair to them, maybe that was the right time for them to turn the corner, just in time for finals. Of course, they had the massive arrival of Michelle Heyman as well. Let's start with Matty on this one, of course. Matty, what do you think about Gungahlin United this season?
Oh, I think, as we can all recall from my comments throughout the year, I've been on the Gungahlin bandwagon since day one. Haven't I? Yeah, look, my emotions around Gungahlin are probably as reflective as their season, where at one point I quite clearly stated they weren't going to make finals. I couldn't see it happening. I'm glad I could inspire the team for you, Diego, because from that point on, they made me look like a real goose. There just wasn't quite that same cohesion that we've seen for the last couple of years. And I remember saying during one of our chats, Matt, that when Michelle Heyman was announced and she was arriving, I put Michelle Heyman in the Gungahlin team from 2 years ago, or the last 2 years, not in the team as we saw it today. And it wasn't quite the same. There was something in that dynamic that wasn't missing, the rotations that were happening, and the ability to get the left and right fullback forwards just seemed to drop, and they lost games late as well. West Canberra at Gungahlin, where there's 2 West Canberra players sitting at the back post and not a Gungahlin player in sight. Those little things really hurt them. Shout out to McCann, I think it is as well, who was the wide defender. I was just super impressed with her every time. Every time I saw her, I just was more and more impressed with the way that she played. She was brilliant, a really good find for them. I think they would have come in the end. I think they would have come close to making it on grand final day. Percival started to really settle. You had McCann, who could do some. She's not as fast as Bobbin, but she was a presence enough as it was. Michelle is always going to give people a heck of a lot of trouble. And we go back to that game at the AIS that got moved to during Syntho round, and they were a minute away from getting a draw until Thornton remembered she had a left foot and saved the day. So they were an amazing contradiction to watch. And if I don't know how Diego survived the roller coaster that was that year. But the unknown is they lost Sander. They were losing, I think, Jade Brown as well. They were losing Elka Atulu as well, I think, all off to the US college system. So that, for me, that's those 3 losses. Atulu and Brown in particular were the 2 things that might have brought them undone at the back end of the year. But full credit to them. It would have been easy for them all to pack up and go home when they didn't start getting wins when Michelle Heyman turned up. But you could just see it starting to gel. Nat DeMarco starting to get in the goals and a little bit more fluency. So it'd be interesting to see what tweaking they do in the off season to push themselves back. Because if they can hang on to Heyman and hang on to Percival, then really they should be pushing that top 2 a little bit more than they were this year.
We'll go to Jérémy and then we'll start with Steffen for the next team. Quick thoughts on Gungahlin United?
Yeah, I think, well, obviously I agree with what Matty's saying. It was a roller coaster of the season, 3 wins, 4 losses, and then they for a bit they couldn't buy a goal. I think interestingly enough, I think that's what they missed. Somehow at one point they just couldn't find the back of the net, and it probably got into their head a little bit, and then you start losing a bit of confidence, and then it's just harder to get together, and then you start doing a few things the wrong way, and then you lose a little bit of the togetherness. And I think they're just a little bit of a vicious circle that got in the squad, I reckon. And it can only be so hard when you're a coach and when you see that happening. And how do you turn it around? They had basically the same squad as last year, with Ayla Robertson not able to play as much as a right back, and Bridget Sander injured a little bit, and then coming back. Obviously, the addition of Magan was great, and they have added Nat DeMarco, who's a fantastic player, but I think somehow how good she is and how technically gifted she is somehow disturbed the balance that we've seen last year, because now they didn't have the Tanya Miro or the Steffi Legends in the midfield, who was just running. That's all they were doing. They were running a lot, and they were, never stopping in place. Whether now with the 2 DeMarco sister, with either Corbett or Legends, I felt like you were missing a trick in that midfield. And if you add to that the fact that at one point you can't score any goals, then I think it's hard to make it. Eventually it came back, and eventually they did it. Like Matty said, not having Bridget anymore at the end, not having Jade anymore at the end. I didn't know, I forgot that LK was going as well. Would have probably been hurtful. But any team who has Michelle Heyman has a chance to score 5 goals out of nowhere. So I'm sure they would have done something right. And when you got Kelly Ternini in goals, and when you have Maddie Percival in defense, you're also pretty solid on your back line. So it was weird not to see them being as good as they were at one point of the season. But like Matty said, if you, not even with the right tweak, with just a good preparation, the same team as you had one season to the other, and if you can hold on to the players and replace the few that are leaving by players with the same quality, there's no reason for Diego not to be challenging again for the final next season.
And moving on to 4th place, Canberra United Academy. Interesting season overall for the CUA. It's safe to say under new coach Vicky Linton that they had more of an intensity about them. Obviously, we all know them for the style of play that they teach to the girls there, but she really brought a different intensity. All we have to do is go back to that match that Jérémy and I did at Hawker against Canberra, Croatia, how from the first minute they just completely frustrated Canberra, Croatia, and not a lot of teams could do that this season. They did it twice, getting a draw and then a win against them as well. I agree. Lincoln was absolutely fantastic in goals. Best performance I saw as well of anyone in keeper at that match at Hawker. And one player I thought that not a lot of people talk about that I thought was terrific whenever I saw her play was Eliza J. Norris as well. That final match against Canberra, Croatia that we did. She somehow was able to, for good portions of the game, was able to mark Brittany Palombi out of the game, which is a very, very, very rare for people to do. So I thought she's going to be a standout moving forward as well. Let's start with you, Steffen. You got your Canberra United Academy jersey and background going on there. So
I do, yes. Don't they love playing for Vicky? Vicky came back to the squad after a bit of a break after the W League season, and it was immediately apparent what effect that had on the team. They went in a bit of a run where they were unstoppable for a few weeks and a number of weeks, and so she's obviously a massive inspiration. And why wouldn't she be? The W League coaching a group of youngsters. So that was really, really good to see. Some other things that are really good to see. Annalise Grove, Player of the Year last year, another tremendous year this year. Really good to see that she got her scholarship with Baltimore and is over there playing. So good on her. Solid as at the back, and it was really satisfying to see Sasha take the captain's armband from her when she left late in the season. So to be to carry on that Grove tradition there. And I see there's a third Grove in the wings in playing in the younger grades as well. So it's going to be nice to see that happening as well one day potentially. They're a little bit up and down, some high points and low points. They had a draw against Tuggeranong, which I was at. So it wasn't their best game, but Tuggeranong were really good, and I think Tuggeranong were starting to turn their season around a bit at that point. Vicky Linton wasn't afraid to rotate the squad in and out. With the development remit, she's got a bit of a different emphasis, I guess, compared to most of the coaches in the league. It's a development team, so she made sure that players got their time on the pitch, and sometimes that was at the expense of your most experienced players. Like quite often you'd see players like Annie Grove and Tara Cannon and that on the bench. So I thought Sasha and Meg Roden steered the team around well from the middle of the park. Sasha wasn't quite as prolific with her goal scoring as we've seen in previous years, for example, when she was teaming up with Hayley Taylor-Young up front. But she was still dynamic, a handful, really important to that team this year. Chloe Lincoln, as you said, outstanding. And Sophia Christopherson scored 11 out wide up front. And as Matty also said, Anna Hunt was remarkable as well, just for her work rate up there. And she's also scored 8 goals. And I really like the look of Bessie Ruthmuller in attack in the last game. So someone to look out for in future years as well.
All right, let's move on to Canberra Olympic in 5th place. They had the one of the runner-up top scorer in Ashley Sykes with 21 goals. She wasn't far off this year. Olympic probably lockdown probably came at the wrong time for Olympic, because if it happened before they had the schedule of terror against Canberra, Croatia and Belconnen one after the other, I think if it happened like 2 rounds earlier, they would have been 3rd. So that just proves how tight it was between 3rd and 6th.
We only had a COVID outbreak earlier.
Yeah. I'm sure they were just going, oh, geez, why didn't it happen earlier? Then they would have been like that. But I always looked at when I saw that schedule for their season going Canberra, Croatia, and Belco right next to each other. It doesn't help when you got them back to back, but it's safe to say that the team was improving, I would say, rapidly throughout the season. And even compared their games against Canberra, Croatia, and Belco, compare that to where they were at the start of the season in those first two fixtures, you can see the improvement with the team there. Nicole has tried to make them a little more tactically flexible, moving between 3 and 4 at the back, which I thought was interesting. It worked well in certain periods of certain matches as well. Plenty of players stood out there. Of course, Ashley Sykes, what can you say? Absolute gun up front, as she always is. Let's start with Matty for this one. What do you think about Canberra Olympic?
Canberra Olympic. So we normally talk about inconsistencies from week to week. It was sometimes half to half with Canberra Olympic. It was really odd. I think back to the game Jérémy we did against CUA, where they didn't look like they wanted to be there in the first half, and I think they were down by 3 potentially. And then in the second half, they turned it around and they became the threat that we knew that they would be. And it was just that mental application and that consistency just wasn't there all the time. So they couldn't see through the job. But in saying that, when they were switched on, and it's a process, right? When you're skilling a team up and as you develop, what is essentially a pretty new group, you could see the processes that Nicole Beck was putting in place, and you can see what they were trying to do, and you could see success. They just weren't in a position to be able to do that for 90 minutes. And when you think there was probably half a dozen players, if not more, that arrived on their doorstep the day before or the week before round 1. So they were always 3 or 4 weeks behind in terms of their preparation. And there was a lot to like about them, though. Bringing Courtney Hulse back as well to sit in the centre of defence with Ali Cook early on. She was a great pickup and a good addition for them. Ella Hemmings making her return as well. And even pickups throughout the season. They got Tiana Miro over from Gungahlin. So there's and I was actually super impressed with Fiorese throughout the year as well. I thought she was absolutely brilliant, not to mention the captain, Jameson. There's enough there to indicate that there's something building and growing, and that's what we want. Matt, you mentioned, if COVID had happened 2 weeks earlier, but even by the end of that last round, who knows what would have happened had they had some minor sort of patches where they could put it together for even 60 minutes or 70 minutes. I think would have made the world of difference for them. So there's plenty of upside there for Nicole Begg with that group, and you just hope that the majority are there to go around again.
Any thoughts on Olympics, Steffen?
Yeah, I think with Ellie Cook getting forward with the arrival of Ella and Brittany in the central defence, the spine is good, strong. I actually think they struggle with the width sometimes, and that probably leads to their ability to score lots of goals but leak some goals. I think sometimes that comes down the edges a bit. So I'm not sure how well Tiana settled in. It's going to, as you said, Matty, lots of late inclusions. So settling in, it was a constant issue. Really looking forward to her settling in and playing a greater role. But with Nicole being, one of the finest wide defenders the city's ever seen, really hope that she'll, be able to impart her wisdom in those wide areas and get them going in that way. So. But I'm just looking at the number of players who came into the team, and it's like an entire team. Like there's 11 or so, 10 or 11 who came in. So that's a lot of rebuilding, a lot of reshaping. The culture is fantastic there. I mean, some really good work initiated by Andrew Woodman and continued. So they have a really good thing going there, but it's just a matter of spending that time with them, and I'm hoping that this pre-season coming up is a really fruitful one for them, and they get that that togetherness for the next season.
I'll jump in there, Matt, if you don't mind. I think one thing that I was, I guess, sort of impressed with, and I want to commend Nicole for, is she made them play 3-5-2 or 5-3-2, which is a tactic that I haven't seen in NPLW, and that I think was probably new to a few of those girls, even the more experimented. And where you talk about the width, Steffen, I agree, because if you put a 3-5-2 and you ask of Victoria Jamieson and Sienna Farrar to play up front and to cross the ball, but then to also come back to defend on those wingers that the other team has, most likely playing for a 4-3-3. It's a lot of work that's asked of the team, and it's a lot of tactical, alignments and realignments and repositioning that is asked that maybe was never asked of those players before. So I think she's definitely educated their player a lot this season by showing them another way of lining yourself up and another way of playing, and I think it was almost going to pay off. What we've seen and probably what was a good learning experience for Nicole as a coach as well is the team was different whether you had Heather Garriok in it or not. Just because of her presence and her experience and what Nicole was doing last year when she was playing with Olympic, no one was doing this year, which is being the relay of the coach in the middle of the park, making sure everyone, manages the momentums the right way, positive and negative. And once Heather was on the pitch, all of a sudden, obviously the experience of a player like Heather Garriok will help in that sense. So I think she definitely brought something different to the league and something that I really enjoyed. I think it was great to see Nicole Begg, who was prone to get emotional on the pitch when she was playing, not being that at all when she's on the bench. And I'm sure it's been an exercise for her to,
it happens. Remember Kevin Muscat? He was similar. He was
very
tame on the bench.
Very, very tame. I feel like, it was probably an experience for her to do that. I think another striker next to Ash Sykes who can bring something different is where they can also progress. Maybe if Ashley tried to score from outside of the box as well, 21 goals in the 6 yard box. I think very, very, very efficient. But no, well, obviously I'm joking. She's a fantastic striker. But yeah, I really enjoyed basically what I saw in Olympic, and I think trying something new with that many new players at once, you should be a very good coach in the background to make sure nothing explodes in your face. So I was really happy to see Olympic this season.
Yeah, I was also going to add too, Jérémy, they only had really 3 goal scorers this year. They only had Ash, obviously, Ali Cook with 9, and Vanderbroek with 7, and then Daylight to anyone else. So they need some more goal scoring threats. And we know Rachel Hardwick can do that, for example. I mean, she's a fantastic central midfielder, and we saw when she was at Monero how many goals she can score. So, some additional goal scoring threats, and as you said, perhaps another forward would be really welcome there.
All right, moving on to 6th place, which was West Canberra Wanderers. They, of course, had that great run in the Fed Cup, finished runners-up. But what didn't happen at West Canberra this year, I think, is the question we should be asking. I mean, it's like interesting season overall. So, like I said, safe to say they blew everyone's expectations out of the water with that great Fed Cup run, and that eventually turned into great league run as well. I think they were on a spot where they had, was it 5 games or something like that? They were unbeaten or won in a row. They had this great track of results at one point with Emma Stanbury as coach at the start of the season. Tiana Jaber was fantastic in there. Like you mentioned, King, several other players as well. Mackenzie was really, really good. I'll let you guys expand more upon the players, though. In saying that, though, they had a very, very good season. Then straight after, or not long after the Fed Cup, and Emma was gone, Tiana was gone, Ray Castro came in as the interim till the end of the season. Then they struggled a bit for form. They weren't able to pick up the same form they did until near the end, where they started to pick it up again as well. So they might have, and like we mentioned how close it was between third and sixth. They could have ended up in the finals anyway, but a lot happened at West Canberra this season. Oh, and of course, can't forget Sophia Chavera also had a fantastic season. It's safe to say she really did a great job this season. Let's go to Jérémy for this one. What do you think of West Canberra?
Yeah, I agree with you. What didn't happen at West Canberra this season? Props to everyone involved in that program, really, because basically changing coaches 3 times in a season is never going to be easy. So you had Boyd at the very beginning, and then Emma Stanbury, and it finishes with Ray Castro, and the results were there. I think everyone brought something to the team, and yeah, you mentioned Sophia Chavera, you mentioned Mackenzie. I think Brianna Maguire was great as well. Liz Edwards had a few good pieces of game, and then the more experienced player, Ellen Brown, Sarah Whitfield. I really think that it's a good squad, and it's a good team. And last year there was a bit of the first team was somewhere and the reserve was somewhere else. And Emma has changed that, making sure that the whole senior squad was one group. So I was happily surprised. And at the beginning I said that it was really hard to be a coach and a player, and that I was going to be pleasantly surprised if they had results, and they did get results. The issue was definitely not that she was a player and a coach. It was off the field issue. So I think what Emma has done at the first part of the season was spectacular. What Ray Castro did, once you lose your coach and player, and once you lose arguably your best player, was also fantastic. But it shows that it's a very good group, a group of girls that like to play together, and a group of girls that potentially next year would be also very dangerous if they can keep the core of that together.
100%. Let's go to Matty. Matty, what do you think about West Canberra?
Guys, we needed that Amazon documentary crew that did Man City and Tottenham.
All or nothing.
All or nothing. We needed that for West Canberra this year.
It's all right. No, it's all right. They're doing the disaster that is Juventus at the moment. So, well, they did it last season anyway.
Lucky you. Crazy season. Going into the season, I expected them to be bottom 2, and the job that Emma did, and the style of play that they got going was great. Getting Alex McKenzie back from the boys program was a massive plus for them. Not to mention J-Bar, and seeing players like Maguire grow, picking up Demi Nikias as well, even Emily Jensen for a short stint as well. So there's certainly some interesting foundations there to build from. And for me, that they overachieved, right? They definitely overachieved. That Fed Cup run, I never saw coming. And much like all my other predictions, I thought they'd end up playing finals football after that. So if you ever want to bet against me, you'll make yourself a fortune.
That's right. There's plenty of South Americans that might want that information.
But for them now, they're at a crucial point, because West Canberra, the club as a whole, you've got, Yuli, who's moved on in the boys program, that they've got a vacancy in the girls program, in the women's program, now. They need to decide what they're going to do in this space. And their next head coach is a really crucial appointment for them, to ensure that they can engage these players early, keep these players and build. And, you're not going to replace Tiana J-Bar with another Tiana J-Bar, right? You're going to need to do that through a couple of different mechanisms, but they need to make sure that they hold on to their Mackenzies, and they've got a coach who's invested for a period of time that can work with whatever the club is after, so that they can become that sort of next Gungahlin, for lack of a better term, that really pushes that top 2, because the foundations have now been set. The question is what they do from here.
And next up, we have in 7th place, Wagga City Wanderers. Tough season for the Wanderers. That was, it's safe to say it was marred by injuries. They had a lot of injuries, and they had to, ask if anyone wanted to try out, or they had to go and try and get players from community leagues in Wagga, because there was just that many injuries. It's a tough situation to deal with as a coach, to try and, it's always tough to deal with a couple injuries, but when it's more than that, like they had, it's so tough. And it was a tough season in that regard for them. of all the players, a lot of them stood out, but Sammy M's, like Steffen mentioned before, absolutely just fantastic this season. I mean, she was called up to Young Matildas for a reason. And I'll have that as a segue for Steffen. Steffen, what did you think about Wagga City Wanderers this year?
Yeah, tough year for them, but it wasn't without their highlights with the Young Matildas recognition and call ups. So yeah, Piper, Ava, and Sammy. So tremendous to see, and I'm sure if Tess Vakari was there, she would have been another one in the frame for that as well. So I'm hoping she comes back. Yeah, it's I have the honor of sitting in the crowd when I do my match reporting and write-ups and things, and the feeling when you sit amongst the Wagga crowd is fantastic. So they've got really good spirit in that club. A lot of youngsters, a lot of enthusiasm, and it's great to see because a lot of them travel from other towns, even just to come in to train, and then they have to travel to Canberra. With COVID, I think they had restrictions on having to go back same day, for example, sometimes. So it's a big ask, but there is an undeniable talent and spirit in the group. I had an interesting chat with Sam Gray briefly early in the season about Piper Lockley, because we saw how influential she was. I think the year before Sam took over in the central midfield. Like, she's got amazing vision and is like a puppet master sometimes. You can steer the team around, and it's someone so young with the ability to do that is remarkable. And I asked Sam if he's ever got a question in his mind about playing her up front, out wide, as opposed to back in that role, and he said never, because that Piper will always beat her first player, for example, and put them on the front foot in attack. But I guess counterweighing that is a player like that. If you're under the hammer, you're not going to see much action if she's up front and out wide. So that's an interesting question for Sam. But there's a lot more to the team than just Piper. They also were a team with a lot of turnover, 9 players coming into the squad. They lost Miranda Walker and Madeline Harris, a couple of really important players for them last year. Lisa Carey, but Ashley Holler and Bronte Buick were fantastic for them in the engine room, and Kira Lee Cameron was also very promising, I thought. They were a little less insistent on playing with a higher line this season, which I think was to their benefit. Last season, you'd see them try and stun teams with that tactic, and at halftime, the opposition coach would have a chat and they'd work out how to do the diagonal runs, and then they get tired and things wouldn't end so well for them. So they still are fond of a high line, but they're not quite so wedded to it this season, I noticed. So I think that's probably a good thing. But yeah, I think they really add something to the comp, and with the talent that's there and coming into our competition, it's good to see. But yeah, the injuries cruelled them. Having Piper and Ava out, for example, for stints at various times. Megan Castle, great player up front, but often playing a lone hand. If they're defending so much, Christina Grau-Compas came in to attack as well, but she was often dropping back as well to help out in defence. So yeah, and I think they have some transient with the university down there, transients. So players coming in and out of the town and that sort of thing. So just really looking forward to them keeping the talent they've got there and trying to build year upon year a bit there, and very much looking forward to seeing where they go, especially some of those younger talents.
Any quick thoughts on Wagga, Jérémy?
Tough job for Sam, right? You're right when you're saying transient people down there, because it is what it is. If you have a player that is this good, they might not stay in Wagga, and you have players that anyway aren't going to stay more than a year or two. So you gotta do with what you have, and you have to be able to build a squad with that, and then with all the injuries. It was not an easy year for them. Yet we've seen so much talent coming out of out of regional teams. You mentioned Kiredi Cameron. I think for me, she was a great example of the talent that there is in the Riverina that could go and touch if you didn't have Wagga City down there. So I think it was great to see all those ghosts playing under the Wagga City Wanderers jersey. You said it, the atmosphere at the club is great. Everyone is pushing for them to succeed. And the best that can happen to them is that they leave Wagga City to go to a bigger club somewhere else, not necessarily in Canberra, which it happened to a couple of girls who played last season. It's a squad that for I think 75% of it a couple of years ago was winning the under 17 competition with Sam as a coach. So it's a very young squad who's building, who's learning how to play against women, and we are seeing a ton of improvement. We are seeing a little bit of naivety, which is normal because they're learning as well. And in the middle of that, you have Sam Ems, you have Piper Lockley, Tess Vakari, who's unfortunately was injured but was phenomenal last season. Magan Castle, who's such a lethal finisher. I wouldn't like to be a goalkeeper in front of her. So it's great to see what he's doing down there. It's such a tough job. Sam really has all my respect for running a very good program down in the Riverina.
Definitely good things coming out of Wagga. Great job Sam Gray is doing there, of course. Now moving on to Tuggeranong United, finished in 8th place. It was a tough season for Tuggeranong overall, but it did end in jubilation though, of course, with that game that Jérémy and I called there at the AS Synthetic where they got their first win of the season. They did get a draw before that as well. And it was well-deserved as well, it is safe to say, throughout that game and that draw as well. And let's not forget there was that one match against West Canberra where they heartbreakingly lost in like the last couple of minutes where they were quite unlucky. Let's not forget they've had a bit of a transition of a season as well with Michael Aldred stepping down a month or so before the season, maybe a bit more. And President Stan Mitchell stepped in as interim. And when I talked to him for one of my articles, he said, look, I'm going to be honest, my role was, before we found a coach, is to find a way to just keep the morale up. He decided, let's just play defensive, part the bus, let's try and keep the morale up of the team before we get in the coach who can implement their style. And they found Paula Romero, who, it's safe to say now, it seems like they're pretty settled now at Tuggeranong. The girls have responded really well to her. He's starting to build something there, and I already saw on Facebook that Paolo will stay on next season. So it seems like Tuggeranong will be building quite a bit in that regard. Of course, some standout players like Stefan mentioned, Zoe Terry was fantastic at fullback, and also I thought Matty McGee as well did a really good job this season. Also, when I saw her play in the games that we commentated. Let's start with Matty on this one. What did you think about Tuggeranong?
Yeah, look, sounds a little bit weird to say about a team that finished bottom, but they're a really good story and a really good back end to the season. Unsettling for the team for Michael Aldridge to leave early on, but Paolo Romero has done an absolutely wonderful job, and I know from speaking to some of the players, he's been really honest with them in terms of what he wanted, and to give him a little bit of time. And I think he said initially when he first came on board to the players, give me 4 weeks. And 4 weeks later, we saw some really positive stuff, from them. We saw them push Belconnen all the way to the limits for long periods of time down at Canberra as well. They really exposed sort of wide areas, and, players like that we've mentioned before, players like Condon and, McGee, Terry, Zoe Williams as well. Like even Steph Coates when she came back, there's something to be said there, and they're probably a little bit unlucky they didn't end up with more points, especially given what happened with West Canberra that game there. But I think although sure results, everybody wants to win every game, right? But there is a lot of positives to take out of this year for Tuggeranong United, and I'm really happy to hear that Paolo is going to be around next year, because that will give them the next round of consistency. And you would think that what they've done will only help attract some new players as well. That it probably makes it more appealing for the Zoe Terrys and your McGee's and stuff who maybe were a little bit uncertain when Paolo walked in the door. They seem to be relatively well convinced now that he's the guy that they want to stick with, and maybe there's some opportunities coming up with some other players. It's a really good opportunity, and hopefully, they're not going to be West Canberra in the sense that they've, or Canberra Olympic, where they've got the potential to make the top four, I don't think, next year. But that if Paolo can sit there for the next 2 or 3 years, I think there's a really interesting program going there.
100%. Steffen, any thoughts on Tuggies?
Yeah, they've got quite a number of players who've been together for a while now. So you're starting to see some joy with that in the middle of the park. Steph Coates, as Matty said, Jackie Freeman, Sarah Daisley are all starting to work well as a unit in the middle of the park. I think Sophie Rolfe in goals is better than the 82 goals would suggest. I think she did quite well. And the other thing that strikes me is that Sophie Buey, who's done a couple of college stints in the US, playing with a lot more purpose and nous this season. Previous seasons, you'd see her isolated. And this year with, the 2 wide runners coming through with McGee and Terry coming through, she's looking for them coming through, holding the ball up well, and is able to, play that sort of distributor role from the middle of the park a bit better. So yeah, some good signs, I think. So yeah, I really wish them well, and it was really nice to see them finish on a strong note after given some difficulties at the beginning of the season. So.
And Sophie Buey is another one of those utility players that played in goals. Actually did quite well also from the games we saw. Anyway.
How many good goalkeepers Tuggeranong did have? Sophie Rolfe, Sophie Buey, Jessica Abbott when she came in. It's like there's no player who couldn't be good between the sticks in that squad.
100%. Any last words on Tuggeranong, Jérémy, since this is our last team?
Look, I agree with what Matty said. It's a very good story, and I think it's a good squad. I think there's a mix of being unlucky, a mix of not having had a perfect preparation with Michael Haldred leaving the way he had to leave. Otherwise, it could have been, I think, a success story. We've seen pieces of greatness, I guess, from Caitlin Ewan, from Lara Mustaine, and those are players that, if you have them for a whole season, added to the Terry, the Coates, the Freeman, Daisley sisters, etc., can actually make a pretty competitive squad. So I think, like you both said, having Paolo coming back for another year is just great news. And I would be surprised to see them that far down at the bottom next season.
Completely agree there. That's us done for this review, guys. It's been a pleasure having you on. Matty, any last words before you head off?
Look, just thank you to you, Matt, and Michael for having this podcast up and available for the region, mate. It's a brilliant opportunity for idiots like me to prove how dumb we are with our predictions. But it's fantastic, the service that you guys do for the community here, and I don't know, everybody really appreciates it. And shout out to all the players and all the coaches and all the volunteers who are behind the scenes in our wonderful game, because as much as we get to sit here and enjoy talking about players and coaches, those people who do all the work behind the scenes, and I've met a few of them, they are probably more valuable than some of the people on the sidelines or on the pitch, because without you guys it wouldn't happen. So big shout out to all of them as well.
100%, and thank you very much, Matty, and thanks for coming on and bringing your expertise. Don't let those some of those bad predictions let you down, mate. Steffen, thank you very much for coming on. I look forward to bringing you on again in the future. And any last words, any more plugs for Beyond 90?
Oh no, just a shout out to my young bloke for his photography work.
Yeah, great stuff.
Yeah, thank you to you guys as well. And the competition within the competition in the mid-table this season was crazy and fantastic, and I'm looking forward to doing it all again with you guys and with all the teams again next season. So thank you.
100%. Thank you, Stephen. And Jérémy, thank you very much as always. Any last words? Shout out for the season review book from Russ that you, me, and Russ will be chipping in.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me, Matt. Thanks, of course, for the great work you and Michael this season again. Like Matty said, that podcast is really awesome. Matty, I have a petition here for you to become the next Belconnen coach. It's signed by Bella Tamaro and Michaela Thornton. Is there any truth to that?
I'm wearing red, so my name's probably off the table now, mate.
No, thank you everyone who chipped in. Thanks everyone who's come on to the commentary. I mean, I'm with Matt and Matty most weeks, but having Michael Zakowski coming in, having Nick Brosnich coming in, and all the coaches who've helped us making the commentary better, game in, game out, all the referees as well that are always happy to help. Really thank you. All we want is to try and make this competition as successful as possible and give it the spotlight that it deserved. I think we see year in, year out so much talent in Canberra, and like Steffen rightly pointed out, that battle for the finals this year was amazing. And when you see that the bottom two are teams that we know are going to improve, I'm really looking forward to the future. So thank you to everyone who's been involved in this season. Thanks for accepting somebody that you might not understand every other word that he's pronouncing when he's on the microphone. And I look forward to doing it all again next year.
Thank you as always, Jérémy. And keep an eye out for Russ's season review. Russ will be doing the NPL1 part, Jérémy the NPLW part, and me the NPL2 part. So I'm looking forward to writing for that again. Thank you very much, everyone, once again. Episode 41 of the Canberra Football Show. That was our NPLW review. Thank you very much.